Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to askNK. This is definitely one of the most exciting videos that I've ever made, and it has to do with this amazing tool that I found. Actually, I've seen this tool over a period of time, tried to play with it before, but I just ended up forgetting sharing it with you guys. But today we're taking a look at the tool known as EmberGen. There's just so many things to this tool that is quite exciting. The very first one of them, actually the bread and butter of this tool, is the fact that it is real time. You're doing your simulation in real time. Every single thing you're taking a look at right now is in real time. You don't necessarily need to, cache your animations or cache your simulation. Everything is happening in real time. It's just crazy what you can do with this tool. And we're going to simply take a quick look, a quick walkthrough for anyone that's very interested in using this tool to know what they can do with it. So starting off, I think it's best to take a look at a couple of presets that they have made and a couple of things that they've actually kept. So I'm going to simply go over to File, Open, and we're going to start off with a very simple one. So this is just insanely incredible. The fact that you just have this thing playing directly on your viewport, regardless of simulation time, regardless of caching, it is playing directly here. Okay, so we can simply go over from here. Let's take a look at something else, and let's take a look at the fire, and you can see we have the fire going on here. So for all of you guys that really love all this fiery stuff, there's something really cool for you. Let's also take a look at something pretty cool. So we're going to look at a couple of these things. Now the reason why we're looking at these is just so that you guys can have, oh my goodness, this is really lovely. Okay, so it's so that you guys can have an idea of what this tool is capable of before you can dive in. And just in case you want to get to download this and try this out, I'm going to simply put a link in the description where you can find this tool. And if you want to get this, you can go to the EmberGen website, which is the Yanga Studio or jangastudio.com, and you'll be able to sign up and get a free trial like the one which I have, because this tool right now is in alpha, which simply means that anyone that wants to play with it can come through, play with this tool, and do some very crazy and interesting effects. Now the effects you can do from here is just ridiculous. Okay, it's ridiculous because anything that has to do with you creating simulations, except for cloth simulations, but once it has to do with simulations that has to do with fire, smoke and stuff, you can do that here. You can't do water here, which is actually something that you shouldn't really bother yourself about. Houdini takes care of that. Let that be for Houdini. If we come over here and also go over to the open, you can also take a look at the cloud. So the cloud also looks really cool. So if you're into creating stuff like this, you will definitely find this very rewarding. So with all of these things said, I think it's actually best to go through and share with you guys how you can create yours and how you can make this, because there's just so many things you can take a look at, especially if you want to start playing with this. First of all, you can create anything you want based on primitive geometries that they have made available here. So we have this one that has to do with the box, and we have for the round box, and at the same time we have for cylinder. So in case you want your simulation to start from a cylinder, in case you want your simulation to start from a given particle system, happy as you can be. Next thing which we're going to take a look at is, once you're done with this, how do you get this thing out? Because I know a lot of you guys will be asking questions about this, and it's best to actually share it with you guys. So if you go over to the capture section, you need to be a licensed user. Right now I am not, and that's why I cannot export these things. All right, but you need to be a licensed user for you to be able to do this. So if you are a licensed user, you can export the flipbook. Okay, you can choose to export flipbook, VDB, or sequence. And I guess sequence in this sense has to do with frame 1, frame 2, frame 3. So you can kind of take this thing out of here and go and composite it in After Effects, Nuke, Fusion, and so on and so forth. All right, and that to me makes a lot of sense. So you cannot export this unless you have a full license, but then you can try this, play with it, and have fun doing it. So for the VDB, we can also play with the VDB. And speaking about the VDB, they've actually released a couple of VDBs that they've generated using this tool, and I'm also going to share where you can find that in the description. You can also generate flipbook. So in case you're working with Game Maker, you're working with Unity or maybe Unreal Engine, and you kind of use flipbook a lot, you might probably want to try this one out, because right here you can set the flipbook size that you want, set everything that you want from here, and simply hit on generate flipbook, and it's going to go ahead and generate flipbooks for you. So you can see that happening here. And the reason why this keeps playing is because, you know, we have loop turned on. So I'm just going to take this all the way back, and you can see what we have here. Now you can also notice that from here, you can take a look at the smoke, you can take a look at the emission, you can take a look at the alpha, and also the depth. And the way you can create this is by coming over here and simply, you know, saying that I want to create this as a PNG. I want to also create the smoke mask. I want to create all these things. If you do those and simply hit the generate, it's going to go through and generate all these things one more time. And right now, once we go over to the flame, you'll be able to see the flame directly there. So this is a very crazy and interesting things, because it's really cool to note that you can have all of these things. All right, so for here as well, you can also see what the depth looks like, and at the same time you can also see what the emissive looks like if you want to just simply check on the preview. And at the same time, if you want to see the smoke, you can also preview this. So I think it's a complete tool when it comes to creating effects or creating flames or creating simulations. So let's take a look at how you can create yours. So if I simply click here where we have our ray tracer and go all the way back and press the spacebar, you would notice it starts all over again. So directly here within the emitter is where you select the emitter and all the properties that has to do with the emitter. Right here, you have to select simulation and all of the properties that has to do with simulation, visualization as well, and finally capture. All right. So if we go over to the emitter, we've already established the fact that you can start with the sphere and you can start making some very interesting looking stuff by simply taking this up and down. It's just incredible how this happens really fast. Okay, you don't necessarily need to simulate, and it's just mind blowing. So I have this, and I can also see what it does to the floor. Like once you get close to the floor, you can actually see how it illuminates the floor once it gets very close to it. So crazy stuff, right? So at the same time, you can also choose to increase the radius, which would also increase how heavy or how light this, you know, simulation could be. So you can do all of that. You can actually make that disappear, and you just get a wisp of smoke. So in case you're trying to make something that starts from nothing and just bombs all the way out, then you can start with that. Okay. You can also choose to animate this, which we're also going to get into soon. So from there, you can come over here, choose the force type that you want. So if you want this to be bi-directional force type, it is definitely going to do that. All right. So you can make this a bi-directional force type and come over here, and you can start changing all of that, and you can have a bi-directional force happening with your stuff. You can also change this to be centripetal, and you can also see that from here. You can increase the force type that you want, and you can also come over and make this rotational. So depending on what you want to create, at the end of the day, you can change all of these things and make them, you know, fit into what you want. Now we can go over to the simulation side of things, and this is where everything that you're doing actually comes together. You can play with the resolution, but for me, I think this resolution looks pretty cool. All right, for the fact that, you know, you have this thing happening in real time, this resolution looks so cool. And we can change this combustion to make it simple, and we have a very simple stuff. I mean, the simulation, we can change the simulation to have it simple, and we can also change it to combustion, which is something like that. And we can also make it as a colored smoke. So for all you stylized lovers, you can also make this as that, and we can also go back to what we had before. We can change the oxygen we want in the fuel, and we can also go in here and change how much, you know, combustion ignition we want, and just those crazy things. So if I could actually do that, so if I seem to reduce how much oxygen, so I think I should reduce that. If I reduce how much oxygen we have, you can notice we have a very tiny effect going on there. And if I start increasing how much combustion, you know, I want to have in our object, you can also notice that happening in real time. So this is just so crazy. I can also come over here and say I want to have more fuel, I want to have more flames to, you know, happen. I can increase the flame gain. I can also increase the temperature gain, which is also going to increase the amount of temperature that we get directly here. So if I turn this down by, you know, pushing this all the way down, you can notice what we have, something very, very, you know, cool depending on the use case. I can also tone this down, and you can also notice that we have more of smoke happening. But once I start increasing the flame gain, all right, automatically start noticing that. And once I start increasing the temperature gain for the combustion, you can start noticing that we're having a huge amount of fuel and a huge amount of fire happening directly there. So you can play with this, increase or reduce the cooling depending on what you want. So if we want this to cool a little bit lower, we can do that. If we want to also play with the flame cooling, we can also play with the flame cooling, and we can have that effect going on there, which is pretty, you know, neat. And if we want to reduce that, we can also reduce that, and you can also get these effects going in. And this is sick, okay? Really sick, I tell you. So we can make all of these changes that we want directly in here. You know, you can simply download this tool, you know, and make all of these changes, play with these things and have fun. But before you start running into that, if we go over to the visualization, we can choose how we want to visualize this. So from here, we don't have any sky, so I can simply say I want to have a uniform color, which is this uniform color that we have here. And by the way you move around this is really simple. If you use your left mouse, you can rotate, your middle mouse you can pan, and you can just simply use your mouse wheel to zoom in and zoom out. All right, so pretty cool stuff you have. And we can also change these to atmosphere so that we can have that atmosphere there. We can also choose to play with the sky color and also play with the sky intensity. So if we want to get more, we can, you know, get that. If we want to change the floor, we can also change the floor. If we want to leave it as none, just to have something, you know, in space. All these things are crazy, really crazy. Okay, so I'm just going to set this as checker like it was before. And this is where you make all of that stuff. We've already talked about the capture, and now visualize, simulation, and emitter. Now let's talk about the animation side of things, because this is where the whole thing gets interesting. Simulation without animation is a little bit whack. So we are going to go back to the emitter, and we're simply setting this as it is. If you press the spacebar, you can stop the animation. You can also use this to reduce or bring back the animation. You can also use this to control the playhead, where you want the playhead to be within the timeline. All right, makes sense. You can use this to actually play with the frames that you want. So right now we have this at, you know, 240. We can set this to 120, and we have that there. So this is the current frame that it is, which is at frame 0, and right here is the timeline scale. Okay, so how do you actually make things work? If I come to the position, or if I come over to the radius, once I go through and just simply click, I have that there. If I go over to radius, simply click, I'm going to also have the radius right here. So with that done, if we want to start putting animations into consideration right here, I think it's better to play this in back so that we can see what we're doing in real time. So from here, I can simply turn this down and we see nothing, and I can just simply use the middle mouse to initialize the first frame. And I'm also going to tone this down, and we don't have anything. I can come over here and add a new keyframe, and right now you can see it goes from nothing to something. At the same time, if I want to reduce this, as far as this is turned yellow, it simply means that that keyframe is active. So I can reduce this right now. Okay, I can also go ahead and increase this, and we're going to have a huge smoke or a huge ball of fire come all the way from small to big. At the same time, if I want to turn this down, and let's say I want to play with the positioning of things, I can also use the position slider and the position stuff to make that keyframe happen, or, you know, make the animation happen. So I think it's best to actually bring this a bit closer so that we can have this effect. And if I want to, you know, make another kind of effect, I can just simply come over here and drop that and simply turn this down so you can have an effect that looks like this. So pretty neat. You can start making this stuff. The way we work here that has to do with your axis is a little bit different. So Y doesn't simply mean upwards, it kind of means sideways. YZ actually means upwards. So if you want your object to start traveling down or upwards, you can do that here. So the first thing which I'm going to do is just come over here, make sure I have my position done, and I'm going to keep a frame which is going to set this all the way to 0, 0, 0. If I want this to travel all the way up, I can now set that up and come directly here, not here, directly here. I'm going to come over here and start increasing that all the way up. So you can start noticing that we're having this ball of fire traveling all the way from this point upwards. We can still choose to, you know, add another frame down here and bring this all the way down. Okay, so we can still choose to do that there, but I don't know what use case that is for, so I'm just going to let that be. And whenever you're done with any of these things that you're doing, you can simply come over here and click on this button to reset or take everything back to frame 0. So you can see that with this right here, we're getting our simulation to happen, and I can simply just pick this and move it to wherever I want in space, and by simply doing that, you would now notice that we're having our animation, scaling. You'll now notice that our animation is now scaled based on the frames that we have in our timeline. So there's just some very crazy things that I would also like to do. So if we go over to the simulation side of things, I would also like to play with a couple of simulation parameters. And for this case, I would come over to this part and let's just add a bit of oxygen right here, and probably we can, add a little bit more of the fire, or let's say we can add a bit of the flame gain. So I'm also going to do that right here. So I'm just going to add that flame gain right here. So for the flame gain, I can come right about here and put the first frame, and I can go over to this other frame right about this point, and I can just simply increase the flame gain that we have, so we can have a whole lot more flames going on. So for this one, I think it's best to actually take this all the way to that point so we can see that beautiful thing going on with our stuff. So I also think that maybe we can tune this to about 240 so we can have more things going on. So you can now start noticing that we are making more progress than we had before. So right here, I can also come through and add a very small keyframe for the oxygen, and about this frame we can reduce the amount of oxygen that we have in our flames. I can just tone that down a little bit so you can see that. And we can also choose to play with things like the cooling, things like the extension, and so on and so forth. So you can create all of this, and once you're done, you can go over to the capture. And if you have the paid version of this software, it is very interesting that you can come over here and simply change this and switch to the VDB and export this out. So you can choose to export the channels that you want. So if you want to get the channels for the temperature, velocity, fuel, and also for the flame, you can export those things out. But if you want to simply do the flipbook, you can come over here, select the flipbook, set the size that you want, select the frames that you want. For our example right here, we want our flame to actually end, or we want our animation to actually end at 240, skip only one frame. I want to have all of these things here. And what we're going to do is just simply hit on generate flipbook, and it's going to go ahead and generate the entire flipbook for us. And if we want to preview this at any point in time, we can click on the preview, come over here, select any of the channels that we're looking for. So if you want to see the 6-point channel, you can see that here. If you want to see the depth channel, you can also see that directly here. So in case you're working in VFX, this is definitely going to be very helpful. If you want to see your normal, you can also see that there. If you want to see the emissive, if you want to see the flame, if you want to see the smoke, whatever thing you want to see, if you want to see the temperature, you can actually go ahead and see these things here. Now, still looking at this thing, there are I think there are a couple of other things which I would like to share with you guys. So if you come over to this part where we have the visualization, I'm just going to go all the way back. You can switch this from realistic to cartoony, so you can now see what it looks like in a cartoon or a stylized form. We can also switch this to a Kuwahara, and I don't know what that means, but yeah, you can switch that to this. You can also choose to swizzle the channels, so you can switch from RGB to BRG, and probably if this is what you're going for, that would be cool. You can also switch it to the GRB. You can also switch this back to the RGB, and you can get what you want. For the tonal mapping, depending on where or what you're trying to render and what you want your final renders to look like, you can switch your tonal mapping from clamp to ACES and to Hedgy. All right, so Hedgy is the one that comes with this, but I think ACES actually looks nice, so you can switch it to ACES and get something really interesting going for you. So this is, totally up to you. If you want to make animations with this, just share it with you guys. If you want to go ahead and make some very interesting simulations, if you want to also check out the the simulations that they have here, and they're very, very interesting ones that you can just simply play with. All right, so you can see that this is bloody real time, very fast. I just don't know if there's anything out there that kind of matches this right now. It is crazy, it is real, and if you want to test this out, link is going to be in the description. And if you also want to get the VDB that is for free, I'm also going to put a link in the description, and you can simply go through and get this, test this out, play with it, wait for the final release to be out. Although this is available for commercial use right now, and you can go over to their page and make a payment, especially if you want to buy this from them. And this is going to be about it. I would like to know what you guys think about this in the comment section. Of course, if you like this video, you learned something from it, you can go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And if you're new here, it's going to be amazing if you can hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications so that you don't miss the next video or the next update. And until I see you guys again with a tutorial update, Free Friday, Tutorial Tuesday, tips and tricks, things like this. Peace.